Hi, I'm Joe Miller for YogaRenew. I'm joined today by Aaliyah, and today's class is going to be a Hatha class. We're going to be focusing on some backbending poses and eventually building up to a version of pigeon pose with a backbend incorporated into it. So we're going to begin with a supported backbend, and we'll set up two blocks. We're going to place one block in the medium setting and the other block in the higher setting. And then I'm going to have Aaliyah lie down with the lower tips of her shoulder blades here at the leading edge of this front block. And then from there, she'll lie down and rest her head on the other block. And then she can just give me a thumbs up if this feels okay for the time being. I know this can be a little bit of a shock to the system. If you find that it's a little bit too intense, one thing you could do, just sit up for a moment, Aaliyah, is just change the height of this lower block. In other words, if it's a little bit lower down, it's not quite as an intense of a backbend. But I think Aaliyah said she was okay there, so I think we'll stick with that. Okay, there we go. All right. Sometimes I know it takes a little bit of time to just kind of adjust to the shock of being in this position. So I think what we'll do to make it, to kind of ease into it is incorporating a little bit of movement. So Aaliyah, you can interlace your fingers behind your head. So kind of behind the head, so you might have to lift your head up just a little bit. And then as you exhale, curl your head up. So you're going to look down towards your knees. You can support your head with your hands as you curl up. And then as you lift up, you're going to fold your elbows in towards each other. So like a little crunch, that's it. Take an inhale here. See if you can breathe into the contact with the block. And then exhale, lower your head back down, supporting it with your hands. We'll do that a couple of times. So take an inhale here. And then as you exhale, curl up. Again, inhale, breathe into the block. Feel that contact. Exhale, lower your head down. And one more time like that. So exhale, curl up. Inhale, breathe into the contact with the block. And as you exhale, lower your head back down. And we'll pause here. And then we'll do a little bit of movement, but moving the other end of the spine. So as you exhale, curl your hips up away from the floor like you're doing a little bridge. Take an inhale here, again, breathing into that contact with the block. And then exhale, lower the hips down. Let your spine mold itself to the shape of the block. Let's do that two more times. So take an inhale, and then as you exhale, curl your hips up. Inhale, breathe into the contact with the block, and exhale, lower your hips down. One more time, the same thing. Take an inhale, exhale, curl up. Inhale, the back ribs press into the block. Exhale, lower. And then we'll stay here. And hopefully now with a little bit of movement, maybe you feel like your spine can adapt itself to the shape of the block a little more easily. You can stay with your hands behind your head, or if you'd like, you can clasp opposite elbows and bring the arms overhead. So now there's a little bit of shoulder opening here as well. Generally, it's a little bit easier on the lower back. There's a little bit less of an arch in the lower back with the knees bent, as Aaliyah is doing right now. But if you feel like you'd like to go a little deeper, you can actually also extend the legs. You might feel maybe there's a little more bend in the lower back that way. If it's not comfortable, go ahead and rebend the knees and put the feet back on the floor. And then we'll just take a few breaths here, kind of allowing your spine to essentially mold itself to this contact with the block. All right. Other arm variations that you could do, you could try extending the arms long so the arms have a little more weight, and kind of feeling like maybe even creates a little more opening through the shoulders. Again, if it's too much, just hold opposite elbows. Or you can even bring your hands down alongside your hips. All right, to come out of this, let's again bend the knees, interlace your fingers behind your head. One more time, curl your head up. And then you're going to support your head with your hands so you're looking down towards your knees, and then roll to your side to roll off the blocks. You can take a few moments lying on your side, and we'll move the blocks out of the way. And then roll onto your back. And just take a few moments here in Shavasana. So you can extend the legs long, just noticing any sensation of the memory of the contact, the block, the floor. I'm sorry, any memory of the contact of the block with your back, all right, and how that might affect the contact of your back with the floor. You can rest your hands on your belly. Bring your attention to your breathing here. Just feeling the rise and fall of your belly as you breathe in and as you breathe out. You can see whether or not it will be helpful to have some support behind your head. So I was just noticing that when Aliyah was lying down, that her forehead was a little bit lower than her chin. So her chin was kind of tilted up towards the ceiling. So just to bring the head into a little bit more of a neutral position, I've put a blanket behind her head. With each exhalation, she can just settle into the support of the floor. And then bend your knees and place your feet on the floor. Open your arms out to the side. Press your feet into the floor, lift your hips and shift them a little bit over to your left. And then bring them back down. And then bring your knees up towards your chest so the knees are at about hip height, and lower the knees over to the right. There we go. And then you could bring the heels a little bit out away from the hips. You're making more or less a 90-degree angle at the knees and more or less 90-degree angle at the hips. And take a few moments here to just settle into this twist. If you find that that the top thigh is not settling into gravity, one thing you can do is just give yourself a little bit of support between the thighs of the block. How's that feel? Okay, good. All right. And then we're going to do a little bit of a little bit more shoulder movement here with some arm circles. So Aliyah will start to slide her left hand on the floor overhead. There you go. You can actually let the hand rest on the floor. And then she'll continue to bring her left hand over to her right. And as she does that, she's actually going to turn her chest and her head. She can just let her head rest on the blanket. It doesn't need to lift. And then she'll slide her left hand toward her left thigh and then start to bring the left arm back behind her. She can turn the chest toward the ceiling as the arm comes back behind her. And then she'll just continue with these circles. And she can really allow her entire body to move. So the head could rest, but you can let the shoulders turn. You could let the rib cage turn. You could let the hips turn. Right? So we don't have to kind of try to limit the movement just to the shoulders for the time being. We're really kind of letting the entire body get involved with this movement. You can continue to pay attention to your breathing and making sure that you're not interrupting your breathing at any point. And then the next time you bring the arm back behind you, just pause there. So with the arm back behind you, opening the arms back out into a T shape. We'll take a few breaths here. With each exhalation, perhaps the left shoulder could settle a little bit more into gravity. At the same time, the left thigh can settle into the support of the block, or perhaps the right thigh if the two thighs are lying one on top of the other. All right, and then let me take the block out. Bring your feet back to the center. Press your feet into the floor. lift your hips, bring them a little bit to the center and then over to the right, the knees up to about hip height, and drop the legs over towards the left. And again, you can have a little bit of support between the thighs of the block. And then we'll do the same thing that we did on the first side. So some arm circles, sliding the right hand overhead. Feel where you need to flip the palm toward the floor, and then you'll continue that circling of the hand, letting your head turn, letting your shoulders follow the movement, letting the spine, the pelvis, everything can follow. You might even be able to feel this movement of the hand all the way down into your feet. And continue to breathe as freely as you can. Noticing at what point in the movement you exhale, at what point you inhale. And then the next time you bring the arm back behind you, pause there. Again, we'll settle into this twist. With each exhalation, perhaps the right shoulder can get just a bit heavier. And at the same time, perhaps the right thigh can get a little heavier. One more exhalation. And then as you inhale, you bring the knees back to the center. Roll over to one side. You can decide which direction feels right. Pause for a moment on your side. And then bring yourself up onto all fours. We'll move the blanket out of the way. And then a few rounds of cat and cow here on all fours. So as you exhale, round the middle of the spine up toward the ceiling. As you inhale, you move into a little back bend and letting the collarbones roll up as the sitting bones lift toward the ceiling. All right, and then with your next exhalation, just come back to what feels like a neutral spine. And then from there, you'll place your left forearm across your mat so that the fingers are pointing towards the right hand. And then rest your forehead on your left forearm and walk your right hand forward on your mat up toward the top of the mat. You can even come up onto the right fingertips. You make a little tent out of the right hand. And then draw the hips back and up. So this is you might think of this as a kind of a puppy pose. It's like a sort of a little version of downward facing dog. Nalia is finding length from her right hand up through her right sitting bone, the whole right side of the body long. And then we'll turn this into a twist. So she'll take her left shoulder, bring it to the floor, and reach her left arm out to the right, resting her left ear or her left cheek on the floor. And then she can actually press the back of the left arm into the floor to help the chest to turn. And maybe she can actually come up onto the fingertips of the right hand and start to look up underneath the right shoulder toward the ceiling. That's it. And then as she settles into this, perhaps she can slide the left shoulder a little further to the right, slide the left hand a little further to the right, continuing to turn into the twist. All right, and then from there, we'll come back up to all fours. And we'll do the other side. So resting the right forearm on the mat, parallel to the front of the mat, rest the forehead on the hand, or the forearm, and then walk the left hand forward. And then from there, she can come up onto the fingertips of the left hand, pull the left hip back and up, finding length all the way from the left fingers up through the left sitting bone. And then turning this into a twist. She'll take the right shoulder, bring it to the floor, slide the right hand out to the left. She can turn the right palm toward the ceiling. And then the whole length of the back of the right arm, she can press it into the floor to help the chest to turn. So that she can maybe begin to look up underneath the right armpit toward the ceiling. Left armpit, excuse me, toward the ceiling. And then maybe she can slide the right shoulder a little further to the left, turning the chest. All right, and then let's come back onto all fours. And now we'll do a little puppy pose with both arms extended forward. So just lower the forehead to the floor, reach the arms forward, reaching out through the fingertips of both hands, drawing the sitting bones up and back. And then perhaps some memory of the block against the upper back that you felt at the very beginning of the class. Could that memory of the contact of the block with the upper back help the spine of the upper back to begin to settle toward the floor? At the same time, we can keep the shoulder sockets lifting away from the floor. So not collapsing down through the shoulders, but really looking to create some that feeling of length from the fingertips up through the sitting bones. And then from there, Aliyah can walk her hands back in, coming up to all fours, and then from there, tucking the toes under and pressing back into downward facing dog. Then in downward facing dog, she can move forward out into a plank pose. So here, I think that was a good choice to walk the hands forward. Her plank was perhaps a little bit short. And then I'm just going to give her a little bit of a little assist here, just to give her an indication of kind of where her hips can be so that she can find more or less a straight line from her ankles, through her knees, through her hips, through her shoulders, and then also through her ears. So if you could just touch my hand with the back of your head. There we go. Good. Okay. And then from there, she can press back into downward facing dog. Downward facing dog, she could pedal her feet in place, bending one knee and then the other, warming up through the toes, the ankles, the knees, the hips. And then that pedaling movement can then turn into walking, so she can slowly start to walk her way forward toward the front of the mat, separating the feet about hips width apart. She can fold forward here over the legs, and then hold on to opposite elbows. And it might feel nice to sway a little bit from side to side. And then holding opposite elbows, if that makes any sense. So the other forearm in front. And again, just letting the head hang. A little bit of swaying from side to side, just to ease into the sensation of length through the sides of the waist. And then releasing the hands towards the floor, slowly roll up to stand, one vertebra at a time, and find Tadasana, mountain pose. I feel like Aliyah can maybe bring the feet just slightly closer towards each other. There we go. Just so that there's kind of a sense that the feet are kind of directly underneath the hip joints. And then as she reaches down through the feet into the earth, no, we'll stay upright for just a moment. So standing upright, still in Tadasana, as she reaches the feet down into the earth, then perhaps she can then invite the head to float upward. So again, she gets as tall as possible. There we go. Right, finding that sensation of length through the spine. At the same time, we don't need to hold the body rigidly, so she still needs to be able to breathe. Right, so there can be kind of a softness within this sensation of length. And just observing how perhaps she gets a little taller and a little shorter, depending upon where she is in the breath cycle. And then with the next inhale, she'll turn the palms out, sweep the arms out and up toward the ceiling. The chest can lift. And then as she exhales, she'll fold forward, releasing the hands down towards the floor. So you might have to bend the knees a little bit to contact the floor with the hands. And then step the right foot back into a lunge. With her next exhalation, she could step back into downward facing dog. And then inhale out into plank. And then exhale the knees to the floor, and then lower the chest down to the floor. Inhale, curl up into a small cobra. You can point the toes. And then as you exhale, push back into child's pose. Bring your hands back alongside your hips. You can take a few moments here just to let your shoulders relax, let your elbows relax, your wrists. And then interlace your fingers behind your pelvis. And just notice which thumb is resting against the tailbone. Again, just for a moment, we can let the shoulders relax, let the elbows relax. And then start to widen across the collarbones. Slide the shoulder blades towards one another. Lift the arms toward the ceiling. And then as you inhale, you'll come upright sitting on the shins. You can keep the interlacing of the fingers. And then we'll release the clasp of the fingers. And just bring the right fingertips to the floor behind you. Lift your hips, and as you do that, you can bring the left arm alongside the left ear. Just finding kind of a little back bend and a little twist. Press into the right hand and try to lift up out of the right shoulder. Oh, that's beautiful. And then as you exhale, lower the hips back down. And then let's do the same thing with the other arm. So left fingertips to the floor behind you, lifting the hips, the right arm alongside the right ear, pressing the shins into the floor to press the hips up, and then lowering the hips back down. Walk the hands forward to all fours, and then from there back into downward facing dog. Inhale, raise your right leg up in the air, and then as you exhale, bring your right knee forward towards your chest. Just the knee into the chest. And then inhale, we'll reach the right leg into the air again. And then exhale your knee towards your chest. Inhale your knee into the air. One more time like that. Exhale your knee towards your chest. Inhale, lift the leg into the air. And then as you exhale, step the right foot forward between the hands. So now bringing the foot down to the floor. Lower the left knee to the floor. If this is at all uncomfortable on the left knee, you can make it a little bit more comfortable by giving yourself a little padding by placing a blanket underneath the knee. And then climb the hands up onto the right thigh. Interlace your fingers and invert your palms and press your palms up toward the ceiling. And then press through both feet into the floor. So you're using that pressure of the feet into the floor to control how far forward the hips come. But you'll feel that as the hips come forward, that starts to pull the front of the pelvis downward a little bit. Can you invite the chest to lift in the opposite direction? And then as you exhale, pull the hips back and press the palms forward. So finding a little cat spine. So the palms press forward. You can allow the head to release, kind of looking down. And then as you inhale, we'll bring the hips forward again, pressing the palms up toward the ceiling and letting the chest lift. We'll do that 2 more times. So exhaling, hips pull back as you round the spine, little cat spine. Inhale, coming forward with the hips as you press the palms up. Let's do it 1 more time. Exhale. And then inhale, coming forward. And then just release the clasp of the hands, but keep the fingers reaching toward the ceiling. Rest your right forearm on your right thigh. And side bend towards your left. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Side bend toward the right. But thank you so much, Aaliyah, for doing what I said. but actually side bending toward the right. So you're finding length through the left side, and perhaps you feel a little more of a sensation of opening through the front of the left hip. And then from there, we can circle the left hand down to the floor, and we'll move into a twist to the right, bringing the right arm up toward the ceiling, turning the left side of the chest under the right. Good. Very nice. And then bring the right hand down to the floor, tuck the left toes under. You can lift the left knee. Now you might want to have some blocks underneath the hands just to make it a bit easier to stay in contact with the floor. As you exhale, start to lengthen through the right leg and fold. And then inhale, bend the right knee. As you bend the knee, lift your chest. And then as you exhale, lengthen the right leg and fold, letting your head release. There we go. Let's do that 2 more times. So inhaling, bend the right knee. Exhale, lengthen. Inhale and bend. Exhale and lengthen. We'll stay here for a few breaths, folding over the legs. You can always adjust the height of the blocks to make it easier to stay in contact with something with the hands. And so it really helps to have some support from your hands, because otherwise if your hands are kind of floating in the air, it makes it a little bit of a tricky balance and can make it more difficult for your muscles to be able to let go if you have to, if you feel like you're fighting to keep yourself from falling. All right, with your next inhale, bend your right knee. As you exhale, step your left foot forward and fold. You can set the blocks off to the side for the time being. And then inhale, sweep the arms overhead. And exhale, come back to Tadasana. The feet root down, the head floats up. Finding that sensation of length between the heels and the crown of the head. And then with your next inhalation, sweep the arms overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, stepping your left leg back to a lunge. And then exhale into downward facing dog. Inhale to plank. Exhale your knees to the floor, and then lower your chest down. Inhale, cobra. Exhale, child's pose. Again, bring the hands back alongside the hips. Flip your palms toward the ceiling, and just kind of allowing the shoulders to relax, so there's some sensation of width across your upper back, feeling of weight in the elbows and the wrists, kind of softening and letting go. And then interlace the fingers behind the back of the pelvis. Just switch up the interlacing so you've got the other thumb resting against the tailbone. So all the fingers kind of slide over one. So we kind of undo the clasp of the fingers, and then each finger kind of slides over one. So it's the way that feels a little bit sort of odd, or kind of feels a little bit funky. And then start to roll the shoulders toward the spine, roll the elbows toward each other, lengthen the arms, reaching the hands up toward the ceiling. And then with the next inhalation, sit upright on your shins. Bring your fingertips to the floor behind you. So releasing the interlace. And then we'll lift the hips up with both hands on the floor. Inviting the chest to lift. If it's comfortable for your head to go back, that's fine. If it's not comfortable, you can always keep your chin in towards your chest and look toward the front of your mat. And then lowering the hips back down to the floor, walk your hands forward, and move into downward facing dog. Inhale your left leg up in the air, and then exhale your left knee in towards your forehead. Inhale, raise your left leg up in the air. Exhale your knee towards your forehead. Inhale, lift up. One more time. Exhale your knee in. Inhale and reach up. And then exhale and step your foot forward between your hands. And then lowering the right knee down. And once again, we can make it a little bit more comfortable with some padding underneath the knee. Climb your hands up onto your left thigh. Interlace your fingers, but again, that non-habitual interlacing. So all the fingers slide over, the other thumb is on top. And then invert the palms and press them up toward the ceiling. You can point the toes of the right foot as long as that's comfortable for you, but press the top of the right foot into the floor. And you'll feel when you do that, you actually lighten the weight on the right knee a little bit. Press the left foot into the floor too. That's your brakes to keep yourself from dropping the hips too far forward. Right, so you're just finding kind of some feeling of opening in the front of the right hip, lengthening through the belly and through the chest, but without moving into a range that feels a little bit, too much. All right, and then as you exhale, pull the hips back, press the palms forward, a little cat spine. And then inhale, hips come forward, palms press up. Again, exhale, pull the hips back, cat rounding the spine, looking downwards towards the floor. And one more time, inhale and exhale. Good. Okay, and then inhale and come forward. Release the clasp of the fingers, and then you'll keep the arms reaching up toward the ceiling and just resting the left forearm on the left thigh. And I'll see if I can say this right this time. Side bend towards your left. Maybe you can even look up underneath the right armpit. So if you kind of recall that sensation of the twist that we did in puppy pose earlier in the class, the same idea. You're kind of rolling the right shoulder back to look up. And then from there, you can bring the right hand down to the floor, and we'll take a twist toward the left. Good. Now we're turning the chest in the opposite direction, bringing the right shoulder under the left. The left shoulder rolls back. Good. All right, and then bringing the left hand down to the floor. Once again, you can support your hands with your blocks. Tucking your right toes under, lift your right knee, and with your next exhalation, lengthen your left leg and fold. Inhale, bend your left knee. Exhale, lengthen your left leg and fold. All right, let's do that 2 more times. Inhale and exhale. And once again, inhale and then exhale, lengthening through the left leg as you fold over. Now, when I say lengthening the left leg, it doesn't mean that your left knee has to straighten all the way. This is a practice of self-exploration. So we're really just looking to find the place where it feels like the left leg can lengthen too easily. You might find that place where you feel like, oh, if I kind of pushed a little harder, I could go further, but that's not necessary. Just finding that place where your left leg will lengthen too easily and settling in there. And then with your next inhalation, bend your left knee. As you exhale, step the right foot forward. We can set the blocks off to the side as we fold over. And then inhale and sweep the arms out and up toward the ceiling. And exhale, release the hands down alongside you, just coming to stand in Tadasana. And then once again, finding that sensation of length between the feet the crown of the head, as if the head were a balloon and it could just float upwards towards the ceiling, drawing the spine into length. With your next inhalation, sweep the arms out and up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, and step your legs back into downward facing dog. So bending the knees enough to contact the floor with the hands. All right. And then as you inhale, come forward once again into a plank pose. And as you exhale, lower your knees to the floor, lower your chest to the floor. Inhale, curl up into a cobra. And then from here, we're going to bend the right knee. And then you'll start to bring the right foot over to the left side of your mat. As you do that, you can push through your left hand and you'll come up to sit. So you're facing toward the back of your mat. So the right foot releases towards the floor behind you. And then from there, then you can press into the left hand and the left foot, lift your hips, bring the right arm alongside the right ear, and opening the chest up toward the ceiling. Beautiful. So like a version of, sometimes we call this a wild thing. And then from there, we're going to flip over into a three-legged dog. So Aaliyah will bring her right hand to the floor. She'll raise her right leg up into the air. Take an inhale here, and then exhale and step the right foot forward between the hands. Turn the left heel down to the floor. And then from here, we're going to come into Warrior Two. So the left heel will turn down. Aaliyah will bring her upper body up to vertical into Warrior Two, turning the chest toward the left side of the mat. Very nice. Press really strongly through the left heel into the ground. Flip the right palm toward the ceiling. And then slide the left hand down the outside of the left leg, reverse warrior. And maybe, again, that feeling of looking up underneath the right arm toward the ceiling. And then bringing the right forearm onto the right thigh. Lengthen the left arm alongside the left ear. So extended side angle. And then as Aaliyah presses the left foot into the floor, she can begin to roll the left side of the chest back, perhaps, looking up underneath the left armpit toward the ceiling, as long as it's comfortable. And if it's not comfortable, of course, then no need to see the ceiling. You've seen it before. All right, good, very nice. Let's bring both hands down to the floor. Bring the hands on the inside of the right foot. Walk your hands around to your left, and then you're going to pivot your feet into a parallel straddle. Take an inhale to lengthen the chest forward, and then exhale and fold once again, releasing the crown of the head down. All right. And then remembering that twist that we did in a puppy pose at the beginning of the class, we'll do something similar here. So Aaliyah will keep her hips where they are, but she'll start to walk her hands forward as if she were kind of moving into a downward facing dog with her upper body. So you don't need to go that far forward. That's it. So the hips are still pulling back. She can come up onto the fingertips of the right hand, or she can support her right hand on a block. And then from there, she's going to take her left hand to the outside of the right leg somewhere. So maybe the ankle, maybe the calf, maybe the thigh. And then she'll take a little twist to look up underneath the right armpit toward the ceiling, turning the chest. Oh, very nice. Good. Continue to look for length through the spine. And then from there, we'll bring both hands down to the floor. Walk them around toward the right foot, pivot around into a lunge, and from there back into downward facing dog. Again, inhale, come forward into a plank pose. Exhale, lower the knees to the floor, lower the chest to the floor. All right, and then curl up into a small cobra. And then we're going to do that little funny thing that we did before of kind of now bending the left leg, lowering the left foot to the floor behind you. And that's it. And then you kind of push into the right hand to come up to sit. A little bit of an odd little thing there. And then lifting the hips up. Beautiful. Very, very nice. And then from there, can you flip back over? Three-legged dog. Yeah, very nice. Beautiful. All right. Reach up through the left foot. And then as you exhale, you'll bring the left foot forward between the hands. Good. And then turning the right heel to the floor, rise up to Warrior Two. Good. All right. And then I feel like, Aaliyah, maybe if we bring the left foot just a bit farther to the left, so we don't have the right foot crossed so far back behind you, it might make it a bit easier. There we go. Beautiful. Okay. Flip the left palm toward the ceiling, reverse warrior. And then from there, you'll bring the left forearm onto the left thigh and reach the right arm alongside the right ear. Very nice. Turning the chest open toward the ceiling. Now, at the same time that you do that, could you use your left elbow to just steer the left knee a little bit toward the left side of the mat? So the idea is you're kind of, rotating the chest in the opposite direction. That's it. Good. And by keeping the knees stable. All right, and then let's bring both hands down to the floor. On the inside of the left foot, walk the hands around to the right, and then you'll pivot into a parallel straddle. Just take a few moments to fold forward here. Perhaps you can even imagine that you are, with your hands on the floor, you're trying to kind of push the floor forward a little bit with the hands to move the chest toward the thighs. And then we'll lengthen the chest forward, start to walk the hands forward. You can come up onto the left fingertips or support your left hand on your block. Take your right hand somewhere to the outside of the left leg. And then you can kind of, preferably not directly on the knee, but a little bit below it or a little bit above it. And you can then just lightly kind of pull the right side of the chest toward the front of the mat to turn to look up. And then we'll bring both hands down to the floor, walk the hands around toward the left foot, pivot around into a lunge, and back into downward facing dog. Good. All right. So you remember that kind of wild thing that we did before where you were moving from cobra to lift the hips up. We're going to do the same thing, but now coming from the opposite direction. So not from the bottom up, but from the top down. So Aaliyah is going to raise her right leg up into the air, and then she'll bend her right knee. She'll start to turn the chest open toward the right, and then she can bring the right foot to the floor behind her. She can actually keep the left leg, well, it's okay. She can put the left foot on the floor, she's done, or you can keep the left leg long. Either way is fine. And then can she turn the chest up toward the ceiling, press into the left hand, and then from there she's going to bring her right hand to the floor, flip back over to a three-legged dog. All right, and then bring the right knee forward toward the right wrist for pigeon pose. So the knee to the floor, and then the right shin will be crossed across the mat about 45 degrees, so your right heel's underneath your left hip. And then from there, she could come down onto her forearms, perhaps resting her forehead on her forearms, and it's kind of settling into this pose. Now, you'll notice that for Aaliyah, her right hip is lifted a little bit away from the floor, so I'm going to give her a little bit of support underneath her hip so that hopefully she can really allow the hip to relax. And at the same time that she can then also allow the left hip to settle toward the floor. All right. Let's add a little twist into this. So stay on the left forearm, but start to lift the chest, and then press the right palm into the floor out to the right. And then as you press the right palm into the floor, you can turn the chest toward the right. Very nice. Good. Okay. And then from there, we can then bring the left hand to the floor and step back into downward facing dog. Come forward into plank pose. As you exhale, lower your knees to the floor, lower your chest to the floor, curl up, cobra, and then as you exhale, push back, downward facing dog. Right, so again, we're going to come into that kind of pose, sometimes called wild thing. We're going to come from the top down now, so raising the left leg up in the air. Aaliyah will bend her left knee. She can turn the pelvis open toward the left. She'll bring the left foot to the floor behind her. She can then come onto the sole of the right foot, or she could have kept the right leg long and just stayed on the outside of the right foot. Either way is fine. And you press into the right hand to lift, and then from there we'll flip the left palm back to the floor, raise the left leg up in the air, three-legged dog. All right, and pigeon pose. So left knee forward, the left shin crossed across the mat. And once again, I'm going to give Aaliyah a little bit of support underneath her left hip. She lifts up a bit, and then that way she she knows she can hopefully kind of allow the pelvis to settle here. You remember at the beginning of the class when you were in that supported bridge and I asked you to breathe into your back, into the contact with the block. There's another good opportunity to breathe into your back here. Could you invite the back to lift and widen with your inhalation? And then with your exhalation, perhaps the forehead, the pelvis can have a little weight. And then the kind of the back can remain broad. All right, let's turn this into a twist. So coming up onto the right forearm, you can press the left hand into the floor, twisting toward the left. Good. And then we'll push into the right hand as well and step back, downward facing dog. Very nice. All right. One more time. Let's inhale, move forward into a plank pose. Exhale, the knees to the floor, the chest to the floor. Inhale, curl up, cobra. Exhale, push back, downward facing dog. And then raise the right leg up in the air. As you exhale, step your right foot to the outside of your right hand. Lower your left knee to the floor. Again, we might want to have a little bit of cushioning underneath the left knee. And then we'll again move into a twist to the right. So you can start by putting the right hand on the right thigh, turning the chest. The left hand can remain on the floor or on your block if you feel like you want a little more height. Turning the chest toward the right. Now, you're more than welcome to just remain here, but if you'd like to, maybe you could bend the left knee and with your right hand reach back and take hold of the left ankle with the right hand. And then if you can find the ankle or the foot and you press the foot back into the hand to turn the chest toward the right. Now, sometimes it's helpful to actually slide the left knee back a bit farther if you feel like you're directly on top of the kneecap. You really want to be a little bit above the kneecap. Good. All right. And then we'll release the left leg, let it go, and step back to downward facing dog. Let me move this block out of Aaliyah's way. And raising the left leg up in the air. Exhale, step your left foot to the outside of your left hand. Lower the right knee to the floor. Twisting toward the left. You can start by just kind of pressing the left palm into the top of the left thigh to turn the chest. The right hand can kind of rest on the floor or on your block. And then again, it's helpful to kind of be a little bit above the right kneecap. I think for most people that's a bit more comfortable. So if you slide the right knee back, at the same time you allow your hips to sink forward, you might find perhaps a little more comfortable position to be in on the right knee. And then from there, Aaliyah can bend her right knee. With her left hand, she'll reach back, see if she can take hold of the foot, ankle, whatever you can reach, and then turning the chest open. Maybe the hips can settle forward. All right. And then releasing the leg, step back, downward facing dog. All right, and we're going to leave that blanket there for the time being. Inhale, raise your right leg up in the air. As you exhale, bring your right knee forward into pigeon once again. All right, and now for this version of pigeon, it's helpful to have the hips lifted. So I'm going to bring the block underneath Aaliyah's right hip so she knows she has a little bit of extra support. She'll start to walk her hands back in, so towards the hips, coming up onto the fingertips. It might also be helpful to have a little support underneath the left hand here. And sometimes it's helpful to have a strap handy as well. So from here, Aaliyah is going to Actually, I should have put this block underneath your right hand. Sorry. There we go. From there, Aaliyah's going to bend her left knee. She'll reach back with her left hand, and either she'll clasp the ankle or she could hold the strap. But let's see. I think she can hold the ankle. Let's see. There we go. Good. Okay. Now you'll notice that to take hold of the ankle, she had to bring the left side of the chest back. Can she then start to bring the left side of the chest forward? So we're sort of untwisting in a way, turning the chest. Well, really, it's a twist, actually, because we're turning the chest forward. Right, there we go. Good. Taking the right shoulder back. Beautiful. Very, very nice. And then from there, she can let go of the left leg, bring both hands down to the floor, and step back to downward facing dog. Inhale, raise the left leg up in the air. As you exhale, you'll bring the left knee forward into pigeon. I'm going to put a little support underneath her left hip now. Let's take this block, excuse me. I'll move that out of the way. And then I'm going to give her a little bit of support underneath her left hand. She can lift the chest, perhaps bend the right knee and reach back to take hold of the right ankle. And then again, you notice as she reaches back, of course, the right side of the chest gets pulled back. She can start to then bring the right side of the chest forward at the same time. Very, very nice. And of course, as I mentioned before, you can always use the strap to hold on to if reaching the foot isn't really feasible for you. All right, and then from there, she can let go of the right foot, bring both hands down to the floor, and step back to downward facing dog. And then inhale and move forward into plank position. Exhale, lower the knees to the floor, lower the chest to the floor, roll over onto your back. Bend your knees, placing the feet on the floor. And I'm going to give Aaliyah a little bit of support behind her head, just to hopefully make this a little bit more comfortable. And then we'll move back into that twist that we did very early on in the class. So opening the arms out to the side. Aaliyah can press her feet into the floor. She'll lift the hips. They really only have to lift an inch or so. She shifts them to the left, brings them down, knees up towards the chest, and then the knees to the right. Very nice. And then we'll just stay in this twist now for a few breaths. Already I noticed that it's a little bit easier for Aaliyah to drop her left thigh down towards her right thigh than it was at the beginning of the class. But if you find that there's a little space between the knees, you can always support the top knee with the block as we did earlier. As Aaliyah breathes out, she can invite the left shoulder to drop. And perhaps even turning her head a little bit in the direction of the left hand, towards the left hand. All right, and then she'll bring her legs back to the center, place the feet on the floor, shift the hips a little bit over to the right. Lift the knees up and bring the knees over to the left. There we go. With each exhalation, just inviting the right side of the rib cage to drop toward the floor and the right shoulder to sink. Sometimes it's helpful to press the left elbow into the floor to kind of unstick the left ribs and slide them a bit to the left. And then maybe that gives you a little more space for the right side of the chest to release down. And then come back to the center with the legs. Cross the right ankle over the left thigh. Hug the left thigh in towards the chest. You can bring your hands around the left thigh, threading the right arm in the space between the legs. Yeah. Can you again invite the shoulders to release? And perhaps from here you can extend the left leg, reaching the left foot toward the ceiling. Maybe it lengthens all the way, maybe not. That's a nice idea. How about some circles at the left toes? I'm going to draw a circle on the ceiling with the toes. There we go. And then circle the other way. All right. And then we'll bend the left knee, lower the left foot to the floor, uncross the right ankle, and then let's do the same thing, crossing the left ankle over the right thigh. And then Aaliyah will hug her right thigh in towards her chest. It's a sort of a similar position to the hips to pigeon pose, which we spent a little bit of time working on already. And then from there, she can extend the right leg. Maybe it lengthens all the way, maybe it doesn't. Circling the toes, very nice. You can see Aaliyah like circling her toes. All right, and then lowering the right foot to the floor, uncross the left ankle. Let's bring both knees in towards the chest. You can hug the knees. It might feel nice to rock the hips a little bit to the right and to the left, just to give the back a little bit of a massage. And then remembering way back to the beginning of the class, interlace your fingers behind your head. And as you exhale, we'll just curl the head up, folding the elbows toward the knees. Take a breath here. Inhale the back into the floor. And as you exhale, lower down, extend your legs long, bring your hands down alongside you, and come to rest in Shavasana. So just taking a few moments to allow the weight of your body to settle. Each exhalation an opportunity to perhaps kind of let go. To come out of this, you can again bring your attention to your breathing. And feeling how the exhalation is an opportunity to settle into the support of the floor. And then bringing some movement back to the extremities, your fingers, your toes. Circle your wrists and your ankles a few times. Might feel nice to bring the arms alongside the ears and just give yourself a big wake-up stretch all the way from fingers to toes, and then exhaling, settling into the floor. And then bend your knees. Take your time, there's no rush, but roll over to one side. You can pause for a few moments in this fetal position on your side. And then slowly bring yourself up to a seated position. So coming upright. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope this class was interesting and helpful for you. Thank you so much to Aaliyah for joining me today. I'm really grateful. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next class. All right, bye.